All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are digging into a source that makes a truly radical claim that one of the most fundamental numbers in all of science, the age of our universe, is completely wrong.
I mean, it's one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask. And for decades, the scientific community has felt pretty confident they had the answer. It's become a cornerstone for, well, our entire understanding of the cosmos. 13.8 billion years. It's a number so huge, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around it. But what if that number isn't a scientific fact? What if, according to the source we're looking at today, it's something else entirely?
Yeah, that's the phrase at the very heart of this document. The author is basically arguing that the standard age of the universe isn't a discovery of physics, but a metaphysical hallucination. And they set out to prove it. So, in this explainer, we're going to conduct a kind of forensic audit. We'll look at two wildly different timelines for the universe's origin, both presented in the source, and we're going to examine the evidence each one is supposedly built on. So on one side, you've got the familiar 13.8 billion years of the Standard Model, but on the other, the source puts forward a timestamp of just 5,786 years. I mean, the difference is just staggering. So let's really dig into how the author tries to build this case. Okay, so the audit starts by taking a hard look at the very foundation of that 13.8 billion year story. The source claims it's not built on solid rock, but on a critical and totally unprovable assumption. And this is its uniformitarianism. It's the bedrock of all deep time calculations. It's this core idea that the present is the key to the past. But the author's point is this isn't a proven fact. It's a philosophical choice. It's choosing to assume that the slow, gradual processes we see today have always run at that exact same speed, even in a past we can't possibly observe directly. And to plug the holes in its own story, the author claims the Standard Model has to rely on what he calls secular miracles. From a singularity where all the laws of physics just break down, to cosmic inflation, which is totally hypothetical, all the way to dark matter and dark energy, which supposedly make up 95% of everything, but we can't see or touch them. He argues these are just placeholders, ideas we invent to make the math work, not things we can actually go out and test. And this really gets to the author's core philosophical point. By depending on a lawless singularity and forces we can't observe, the Standard Model chooses to replace a directed, purposeful origin with a random one, a brainless dice roll. And that's a philosophical choice, not one that's demanded by the evidence. Okay, so let's switch gears and look at the challenger, the source's alternative timeline. Now, the paper frames this not as an article of faith, but as a continuously verified historical and, get this, legal record. So the argument here is that for thousands of years, the accuracy of this specific date wasn't about belief, it was about law. If you put the wrong year on a legal contract or a bill of divorce, that document was instantly void. The author's claim is that the entire civil society, things like inheritance, property rights, it all hinged on keeping this timestamp perfectly intact. Now, to help us wrap our heads around this idea of a record that can't be changed, the author uses a very modern analogy, a social blockchain, right? In a digital blockchain, every new transaction is cryptographically linked to the last one, creating a public, unchangeable ledger. The author suggests this ancient legal system functioned in a very similar way. And here's how that analogy plays out. Every single dated contract is like a new block being added to the chain. It had to be validated by the whole community, because one single error would invalidate it. And over thousands of years, this process created what the author calls an immutable, public, unbroken chain of legal and civil history. So here's where it gets really interesting. The author doesn't just poke holes in the Standard Model. He actually uses its own anomalies, the weird data that doesn't quite fit, as evidence for his own model. First up is what some are calling the cosmic maturity crisis. As you can see in this chart, the new James Webb Space Telescope is finding these huge, fully formed galaxies so early in the universe's history that they shouldn't exist yet. Their rate of star formation just blows past the speed limit in the Standard Models. But the source argues this is perfectly consistent with a universe that was created functionally mature right from the start. And what about the T-Rex in the room? Dinosaurs. Well, this paper completely reframes them. It argues they aren't evolutionary ancestors from a deep past, but are actually artifacts of a kind of biological anarchy or genomic corruption from a pre-flood world where the lines between species were being artificially mixed and corrupted. Now, for this idea, the source points to this ancient commentary from the medieval scholar Rashi. And here's the kicker. It was written over 800 years before the first dinosaur fossil was ever scientifically identified, and yet it seems to describe this exact scenario of widespread cross-species mixing. The author says, look, this isn't a lucky guess. This is a preserved record of a past biological reality. Okay, this brings us to what is probably the biggest scientific objection to any kind of compressed timeline, the heat problem. If you cram billions of years of radioactive decay into a short period, where does all of that heat go? Wouldn't it have literally vaporized the entire planet? The paper argues that this objection only works if you use an overly simplistic model. It puts forward several theoretical ways the problem could be solved. It's not claiming these did happen, just that solutions are well within the bounds of physics. For example, some energy might have been used as latent work to rapidly shift continents. Or maybe decay pathways changed, releasing energy as nearly undetectable neutrinos instead of as scorching heat. Okay, so all of this brings us to the author's final conclusion. And it's less about specific data points and more about the fundamental nature of evidence, science, and history itself. The paper's core argument really boils down to this: the inverse problem. We see the results today, the universe as it is, and we try to work backwards to find a single cause. But think about it. The number 2 could be the result of 1 plus 1, but it could also be from 4 minus 2 or 10 divided by 5. The author argues that, in the same way, the present state of the universe could be the end result of many different possible histories. And this is the author's final, pretty sharp critique. He argues that by treating our method of measurement, that uniformitarian ruler, as the ultimate truth, science is mistaking its tool for the reality it's supposed to be measuring. So the ultimate takeaway from this document is this: the observable data, the author claims, can actually fit more than one story. The choice between a 13.8 billion year random process and a 5,786 year directed beginning isn't forced on us by the evidence. Instead, it reflects the prior philosophical assumptions that we bring to the table. And that leaves us with one last provocative question to think about. Is history something we truly discover out there in the world, or is it a story we choose to tell ourselves? Thanks for joining us.